Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was in Justice League. For decades, he had traveled from one corner of the known universe to the other, searching for a way back to his home planet. But after nearly 100 years of fruitless efforts, even with his legendary stubbornness, Naruto grew weary. Now, he had to let it go. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 25. The date. So, this is how an interstellar map looks like. Wonder Woman said. On the large screen of the supercomputer in the control room, there were countless clusters of stars crammed in together. She did not know where to look. It's a rough map of the 28 galaxies of the known universe. There are countless galaxies out there, but the Green Lantern Corps operates only in two large galaxies, Milky Way and Andromeda, and the dwarf galaxies in their proximity. So, when you hear your Green Lantern teammate talking about the 3,600 sectors of the known universe, that's what he's referring to: Milky Way, Andromeda, and their satellites. Naruto explained. When he zoomed in the map on the spiral of the Milky Way galaxy on which Sol system was located, she said, startled. Wait, all those tiny dots were solar systems. I thought they were planets. Of course not, dummy. He snickered and chided her, but in an endearing manner. They're planetary systems. Or, as you would call them, solar systems. Milky Way alone has hundreds of billions of stars, and for every star, there are at least 2 to 3 planets. Can you imagine what it would be like to have a map with all the planets? How are the Green Lanterns capable of protecting such an immense area? There are only 7,200 of them. She asked. She had been blessed by Goddess Athena with wisdom, but she had not exactly taken any astronomy classes on the Paradise Island. In regards to cosmic awareness, she was not much different than other people. There may be trillions of stars in these 28 galaxies, but there are extremely few systems with planets that can sustain life. Most of the sentient species in the universe require similar conditions to live as the Earthlings: a not too high gravity, oxygen, water, and a gentle climate. Of course, there are plenty of exceptions too, but generally, that is the case. There aren't that many inhabited planets. Most planetary systems don't have even one planet that could support life in them. But it's true that the Green Lanterns are stretched too thin for them to have any real impact in preserving the peace. Otherwise, intergalactic wars like the one between the Thanagarians and the Gordonians would not exist. The most that the Lanterns can do is to just oversee their home planets like Jon Stewart does, and band together against threats that could potentially harm the well-being of entire galaxies. Against someone like Darkseid, for example. Wonder Woman was listening to his words with rapt attention, practically drinking the information. She had been outside of Earth on several occasions before, so she was not a complete greenhorn, but she still lacked essential knowledge about the universe at large. Look at you, teaching others about the universe. I almost can't believe you were the dead last in the academy. Kyuubi said teasingly from the side. Naruto chuckled and rubbed the back of his head. True, I was never good with theory and all that stuff. But you seem to know what you're talking about. Wonder Woman pointed out. Well, how else could I search for my homeworld without learning the shape of this world? I was forced by the situation to learn. But it took me a long time to learn how to handle technology and interstellar travel. He zoomed out the map back to normal and asked her. Well then, where would you like to go? The lost look on her face made both Naruto and Kyuubi laugh. Maybe the question you asked her was wrong. Kyuubi said, and then asked Wonder Woman, what would you like to do? We can go anywhere and do anything. We can visit ancient civilizations, we can go gambling, or we can have life-threatening trips through deadly environments too if you want something spicier. Naruto grabbed the fox by one of his large ears and said in annoyance. Oi, you trying to steal my date or something? Wonder Woman giggled at them. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do. I mean, I usually fight crime. My work with the Justice League takes up all my time. she said, and Naruto and Kyuubi, who had been on the verge of starting a brawl, both stopped and turned to look at her. "You don't have any hobbies?" Kyuubi asked. "For example, this idiot loves fishing, eating ramen, and he used to care for plants too when he was younger. He's great at gambling too." She crossed her arms awkwardly, aware of how unusual her answer had been. She was no different than a workaholic. She had spoken like someone who was obsessed with their job and had no social life at all. A tick mark appeared on Naruto's forehead at Kyuubi calling him an idiot, but he let it slide because at that moment he was more worried about what Diana had said. "What did you do on Themyscira when you weren't training or praying to your gods?" Kyuubi pressed on. Naruto patted the fox on the head to stop him from bothering a very uncomfortable-looking Wonder Woman. Then he took her hand in his and said kindly, "Don't stress yourself over it, Diana. We have one whole week to find out what you like to do. We'll definitely find a hobby for you. And I know the perfect place for it." Half a day later, Wonder Woman had a look of awe at the sight that could be seen through the cockpit's window. There was an enormous man-made structure in the form of a hexagonal star, dozens of miles wide. Hundreds of spaceships of all sizes were flying towards the star-shaped structure, but despite the high influx of visitors, there were so many spaceports to receive them that there were no queues at all. "What is this place, Naruto?" He smirked at her curiosity and said, "You said you don't know what you'd like to do, so I thought this is the best place to find out. Genesis Stadium." "A stadium? How can a stadium be so immense? What kind of events does it hold?" "It's holding matches for the most popular sport in this galaxy. But even if you don't like sports, there are many other things to do. This is basically a space city with millions of people living in it. There are parks, restaurants, shopping malls, hotels, clubs, cinema theaters, casinos, an amusement park, and there is even a small forest." Wonder Woman involuntarily smiled at his contagious enthusiasm. "You put a lot of thought into it." He scratched the back of his head and grinned. "But of course. This is going to be our first date. I'm going to take you everywhere, and we'll try out everything until you find something you like. Believe it," he said with conviction, missing the grin that suddenly appeared on Kyuubi's face when he heard his old verbal tick resurfacing. It was very rare to hear it nowadays. It only popped up when Naruto was particularly enthusiastic about something. Once they got closer to the immense construct, Naruto grabbed the controls of the ship and steered it manually to land on one of the many dry docks of the space city. Something like a cylinder was extended from the main building of the spaceport to the door of their ship, no different than how it was done on Earth with aeroplanes sometimes, to allow the three of them to enter the city of Genesis Stadium directly, without needing to put on spacesuits. Thin but tall-looking robots greeted them in the spaceport's building, and after a rigorous checkup, they were allowed entrance in Genesis Stadium. But when the automatic doors slid open, and they exited the building, entering the actual space city, their sight went white and the three of them were blinded for a few moments as a few dozen blitzes of light went off at the same time. "Oi oi, give me a break." Naruto groaned when he recovered his eyesight and took in the scene in front of them. A large group of reporters were snapping pictures crazily and yelling questions at the same time, trying to talk to the three of them. If it was not for the 10 robots securing an open square in front of the door, they would have been trampled and mobbed by the reporters. "What's the meaning of this, old man?" "Oh ho ho." Someone laughed boisterously and came to Naruto, grabbing his hand and shaking it vigorously. "You told me you're going to visit on such a short notice that I didn't have time to prepare anything special. This is more than enough. I only gave you a heads up so those guys from the Flux Society won't get their panties in a bunch like the last time. You didn't need to get an army of reporters to see us." The man in question laughed out loud at his crude words. He was a rather large human-looking being with a big belly, but his wide back and shoulders made him look imposing. He was bald, he had a sharp and well-trimmed beard, and a red optic device covered one of his eyes. His elegant black and red clothes, and the golden medals pinned on his chest spoke of his high status. "It's good to see you again, Mr. Uzumaki. Come, let's talk over breakfast. Wow, you're a hero in this galaxy, Diana said in wonder after their breakfast with the old man that had greeted them. You've never told me that. I'm not a hero. I'm a mercenary. Mercenary. He said, half annoyed. I got paid handsomely for my services. I didn't do it out of the goodness of my heart. A simple mercenary wouldn't be treated as an honored guest by one of the richest and most powerful men in the galaxy. QB said snidely and laughed. Naruto sighed in defeat. The old man that had invited them to have breakfast together was none other than Duke Maddox, the leader of Technoid, the most powerful economic and military organization in the Xelian galaxy. Oh, come on, stop being so grumpy, Diana said and took his hand in hers. Tell me, how did you get so famous here? What did you do? One of the generals of Duke Maddox betrayed Technoid and almost started another galactic war 4 years ago. I was hired to assassinate that man before things went to hell completely. I saved Technoid's image and the Duke's prestige. Wonder Woman looked at him in doubt. It sounded a little too underwhelming. It was not enough for someone to be hailed as a hero. He forgot to say that he also reversed the Ice Age on a planet that Technoid had almost destroyed several years before. And he did it for free. QB added. It's not as awesome as he makes it out to be, Naruto said, and he made sure to glare at the smirking fox. Technoid scientists had been trying to harness a new form of energy. An accident happened and the natural energy cycle of the planet was thrown into chaos, which, in turn, triggered an ice age. I only had to regulate the cycle of the natural energy of the planet. It took me a few good months, but it wasn't all that difficult. I just happen to be a master at manipulating natural energy, because I am a sage. That is all. At his words, Diana mirrored QB's grin. Ah, our cute little mercenary is embarrassed. She kissed him on the cheek and giggled. You shouldn't be. There's nothing to be ashamed of. If anything, you should be proud. Then, she went ahead and pulled him after her. Come, you promised you'll show me all kinds of interesting things. Naruto gave up on pretending he was annoyed and let himself get dragged by the enthusiastic woman holding his hand. Seeing her innocent smile and her curious eyes as she looked in amazement at their surrounding made him smile too. But in Wonder Woman's defense, for an Earthling, the space city of Genesis Stadium was truly amazing, like a city out of a sci-fi movie. Futuristic-looking buildings, holograms for ads, flying cars, and suspended gardens. It was beautiful. No one on the streets here would believe me if I told them that she is several thousand years old. Her happiness and enthusiasm at seeing new things were so pure that she looked like a teenage girl instead of an old and seasoned warrior. She was so cute that Naruto could not bear with it. Discreetly, he pressed on one of the buttons holding his black cloak tied around his neck. The button's outer layer parted to reveal the lens of a tiny camera. She was so precious that he was going to capture every single moment of it. My goddess, you look like you want to eat me. Are you okay? Diana said and chuckled. Ha! He said unintelligently, but then he quickly added, I'm perfectly fine. Absolutely fine. The princess went back inside the changing room to try another outfit. QB, who was sitting on the bench next to Naruto, lazily opened one of his eyes and said, Stinking pervert. Can you blame me? She's already drop-dead gorgeous, but when she came out wearing only that, I thought my heart stopped for a moment. HNG. Whatever. QB said and closed his eye back, trying to take a nap. He had no reproductive organs or sexual desires like other living beings because he was a chakra beast. He could not exactly understand Naruto's fascination with Diana's appearance. Unbeknownst to them, however, Wonder Woman had super hearing too. It was not to the level of a Kryptonian's super hearing, but it was definitely more than enough to hear their words perfectly despite being in a different room. A hue of pink appeared in her pale cheeks, and she looked at her reflection in the mirror. She cupped her breasts with her hands, lightly fondling herself. Then, her hands trailed down her slim waist and her curvy hips. A confident smile appeared on her face and a mischievous look in her eyes. If that's his reaction when I'm wearing ordinary bra and panties. What if I put on something a little more risque? She let out a soft giggle. I can't wait to see his face. She went to the console in the changing room and interacted with it, scrolling through various clothing items. Seconds after confirming her choices, the clothes she wanted to try on were delivered to her through the opening at the side of the console. It was almost like ordering from a vending machine on Earth. The sound of heels clanking on the floor alerted Naruto, and he raised his head. But when he looked up, his mouth fell open. The outfit she was wearing was way too provocative. The floral lace black bra pushed her already large breasts up and made them look even bigger, while lace panties covered her special place, and the garter belt around her waist could not hide the sculpted abdominal muscles beneath. When his eyes trailed down and saw the way that her thigh-high stockings were digging into her meaty thighs, and how her tall high heels flexed her calves, it spelt his demise. He forgot how to breathe. His face became red from the lack of oxygen and a trickle of blood fell from his nose. He brought one hand to his nose and the other hand started snapping pictures with his device at an insane speed. Earth's digital porn of you is honestly amazing, but this is the real thing. Naruto said, but his voice sounded so funny due to him pinching his nose that Wonder Woman burst into laughter. However, she did not forget to put on a show. Turning around, she bent down slowly and gave him the most erotic sight that he had ever seen in his life. The device fell from his hand and he looked at her wide-eyed. Ah! Wonder Woman said, startled, when in the next moment, his arms wrapped around her midsection from behind. You're doing it on purpose, aren't you? How much do you think I can take before I lose control? He whispered in her ear. A shiver ran down her spine and her heart palpitated at the hunger in his voice. But she was not going to back down then. What makes you think that's not exactly what I want? Luckily, each changing room was separated from the rest of the shop, but it was still a public area on which other people could spy. It was not the place for a couple to do intimate things. You're making it really hard for me to take things slow. Diana smiled smugly and turned around in his arms. Seeing how self-satisfied she looked, Naruto felt provoked deep inside to wipe that confident smirk off her face. She was trying her hardest to seduce him, and he was trying his hardest to resist her advances. It was almost like an unspoken competition. She never missed a chance to tease him. But in the end, he held himself back. He broke the hug and put some distance between them. He consoled himself with the thought that it was not only him that wanted her badly. The effort she was putting into seducing him showed him that she wanted him just as much. It filled him with confidence and happiness. Mark my words, princess, I will get you back for this, 10 times over. I promise. And I never go back on my word. She smirked at him confidently, and her sensual lingerie further enhanced that feeling. Oh, trust me, I'm counting on that. A group of people of several different races were all gathered in front of 2 lanes in a bowling alley. There were over 50 people and more were gathering. The reason for that? 2 humans, a red blonde man with 3 pairs of dark scars on his face, and an athletic woman with black hair tied in a long ponytail, were in the middle of a competition like they had never seen before. The 2 of them had thrown the bowling ball over 40 times until then, but every single time, they had a strike, knocking down all 10 pins. Some people even started to film them with their devices. Naruto and Diana were both experts at wielding weapons and thrown projectiles. In their hands, a bowling ball was no different than a dagger. Even after half an hour of intense competition, they could not determine a winner. Towards the evening, Naruto and Diana were sitting at a table on the terrace outside of a bake shop, eating cake and drinking soda. Naruto was having a fruit cake. He did not like things that were too sweet. In comparison, the princess had a very sweet tooth. She was eating a chocolate cake with caramel topping. Diana leaned on the backrest of the chair and looked at the people walking on the boulevard. It was not the Earth, nor was it Themyscira either. The street was filled with people from all kinds of races, alien to her. Humanoid beings with gray skin, short people with green skin, and just one eye, others with blue skin and webbed ears and so on. They all looked strange to her, but they lived in peace, not throwing glares at others. Then, there were vehicles and hoverboards flying above the street without emitting any gas or noise, and very large screens or holograms displaying ads or relaying news reports. It was like a sci-fi utopia. It's beautiful. Naruto put a hand on top of hers and lightly squeezed it. There are many other places in the universe just as beautiful as this one. I wish I could show them to you one day. I wish we could visit them together. Diana raised his hand to her lips and kissed it lightly. He looked at her very surprised by her gesture. "Thank you," she said. He took her hand and imitated her gesture from before, also pressing his lips against her knuckles. "We'll have many more days like this one in the future. Still, the day isn't over." "Not yet." "You have something else planned on?" she asked with a smile. "Apparently, we are in luck. Every 4 years, this city holds the last 16 matches, the final phase of Galactic football tournament. It's the most popular sport in this galaxy. Basically, everyone is obsessed with it. Duke Maddox invited us to the match this evening. He booked tickets for us in the VIP booth." Looking at the intelligent wristwatch on his hand, he added, "Actually, we should get going soon. The stadium is enormous, it can hold tens of thousands of people. It might take a while to get in." Wow. It was the only thing Diana could say after they entered the stadium. It was the largest building that she had ever been into. The interior was shaped like a bowl, and it was thousands of feet in diameter and height. It was humongous. The green pitch floating in midair in its center did not cover even a tenth of the building's total width. "Mr. Uzumaki, Mrs. Uzumaki. I'm glad you could make it. Welcome." Duke Maddox greeted them energetically and made both Naruto and Diana smile wryly at his words. They had told him that they were together, but they had not given him too many details about their relationship. The man in question assumed that they were married. Coincidentally looking at each other at the same time, Diana quickly stole a kiss from him. The old Duke chuckled to himself at their behavior. "Ah, young love. I'm old enough for you to call me grandpa/grand-grandmother." Naruto and Diana unknowingly thought at the same time in amusement. Love is nice, but galactic football is even better. "Behold," he said, and opened his arms wide when the first team was brought on the pitch by a flying platform. They were 6 deathly pale white humanoid beings wearing black costumes. At their center, there was also a human man, making a rather stark contrast with the rest of his team. In comparison, the other team that arrived on the pitch was homogeneous, all 7 players having the appearance of muscular humanoid lizards. They were wearing white and blue costumes. "I don't watch sports, I've never had time for that. But it looks like the soccer on Earth, just with fewer players," Wonder Woman said. Most of the rules are similar. But you'll see what is different soon." And true to his words, it was just a few seconds after the whistle signaled the start of the match that Wonder Woman turned to look at him wide-eyed. Soccer with metahumans? The movement and actions of the players on the pitch were way beyond a regular human's capabilities. They were jumping to dozens of feet in the air, sprinting at speeds that were hard to follow with the naked eye, and kicking the ball so hard that it looked like it was shot out of a cannon. Furthermore, the black-costumed players could teleport across the field while the humanoid lizards were extremely powerful and fast, and they could use a green-colored energy to momentarily freeze their opponents. He chuckled, satisfied at her reaction. "They're using an energy called the flux. The people of this galaxy have developed an ability to use a tiny portion of the natural energy of their native planet. It's a little similar to what I do, but there are many differences too. At that, Duke Maddox turned in his seat to look at them and chuckled. A few years ago, when Mr. Uzumaki first came in this galaxy and used his powers, the Flux Society tried to arrest him. They thought he was someone who broke the law when they sensed his power. After that, the Duke turned back to watching the match with great attention. The black costume team was his favorite, the Shadows. He was rooting for them, but he was worried because their opponents, the humanoid lizards, the Xenons, were favorite to win the entire tournament, not just that match. It's illegal to use what they call as the Flux because about 2 decades ago, a great war caused a lot of death and destruction. Many planets were destroyed in the conflict because of their weapons of mass destruction which used the Flux. When the war ended, all the living beings in the galaxy signed a treaty to forbid the use of the Flux in anything else besides sports. It was to prevent a similar calamity from ever happening again. Naruto explained to Diana in a quiet voice. After that, the two of them stopped talking and paid attention to the match. Even Wonder Woman was absorbed into it despite that she had never watched a soccer game on Earth from the start to finish. Galactic football was way different. The use of superpowers and the meta-human-like abilities of the players on the field made it look spectacular and exciting. In the end, to Duke Maddox's chagrin, his favorite team, the Shadows, lost the game 3-5. He was so upset that he had not made much small talk with his guests after the match ended, and he left together with his entourage right away. But for Naruto and Diana, it was just as well. They did not have any strong feelings towards the teams that had played on the pitch. They had just enjoyed the spectacle. Later that night, dressed in only a pair of black shorts and a white t-shirt, Diana was standing on the hotel's balcony, admiring the city below. Duke Maddox had made sure to book them the best suite in one of the most expensive hotels in Genesis Stadium, on his money. It was the most luxurious place that she had ever been into. Naturally, the beauty of the view from the balcony was proportional to the exorbitant price. The view of a city in a technologically advanced society during the night is quite something, isn't it? She heard Naruto's voice coming from behind. She saw him with 2 mugs in his hands, and he handed her one too. Hot chocolate. I noticed you love sweet things. Thank you. She smiled and gave him a peck on his cheek. Just like her, he was also wearing casual clothes, a pair of gray sweatpants and a blue t-shirt. The two of them leaned on the railing of the balcony and watched the night view of the futuristic space city together as they sipped from their mugs. We've tried quite a few things today. Did you find something you like? She adopted a thinking posture and started to count the things they had done on her fingers. We went to a restaurant, we went shopping, we played bowling, we went to a bake shop, we went for a walk, then to a casino and tried the slot machines, and we watched a meta-human soccer game too. It's called Galactic football. Have some respect. He berated her jokingly and she laughed. So, what did you like the most? I loved shopping, especially your reaction, she said teasingly. He poked her in the ribs with his finger, and she jumped with a squeak, almost spilling her hot chocolate. Era, princess, what a cute squeal you have. But then, he had to suddenly parry her hand as she attempted to do the same. In the next moment, their hands made a blur of strikes and parries, looking just like one of those unrealistic wuxia movies where they fought so fast that their hands could not be seen with the naked eye. Eventually, they ended up in a deadlock, both holding the other's hands. When they looked at each other, they suddenly realized how silly they were acting, and they burst into laughter. Wonder Woman dressed her voice in an attempt to appear serious and continued to talk about their day from where she left off. The food at the restaurant was rather strange. I've never seen those dishes before. But the bake shop was great. You can never go wrong with cake, he said. Indeed. Chocolate cake is the secret to happiness. She agreed and they laughed together. Wonder Woman noticed that in spite of how serious she was when she was by herself, whenever she was together with him, they spent most of their time laughing and grinning dumbly at each other. She did not dislike it. Not one bit. I also liked playing bowling, it was fun. But the next time we play it we have to give ourselves some handicaps, because we're too good at it. You know, things like knocking down the pins blindfolded. Does Earth have bowling too? Of course it does. You think we're living in the Stone Age or what? She said with a pout. But one simple kiss on the cheek later, and her pout vanished. Watching the football game was definitely a new and interesting experience, and I loved our walk in the park. I love sitting and chatting with you as we watch the city during the night too. I think I love doing everything together with you. Diana trailed off and sighed wistfully. Her words made Naruto feel as if something was tugging at his stomach, and he left his mug on the stone railing of the balcony. He came to her back and he wrapped his arms around her waist, embracing her from behind. He brought his head above her shoulder and kissed her on the cheek. Wonder Woman melted in his embrace and leaned back against his larger frame, enjoying the way he pampered her. It was a new experience for her. She had never been spoiled by someone like that before. Until then, she had lived her life as a warrior, as an Amazon, as the Wonder Woman. The way that Naruto showered her with attention and affection made her giddy with happiness. This really was the best day of my life, she said, and he hugged her a little tighter. She turned around in his embrace and her arms came to his shoulders, hugging his neck and bringing his face closer to her. Their eyes closed and their heads tilted as their lips met in a tender kiss. Holding the other tightly in their arms, Naruto and Diana became drunk with passion and kissed each other romantically for a very long time. Chapter 26 Superman's Decision. Aya, I don't want to go back. Diana whined and rolled in the bed inside Naruto's bedroom in his spaceship. If her fellows from the Justice League saw her actions at that moment they would think someone else was impersonating her. It was difficult to believe that a several thousand years old warrior princess was throwing a tantrum like a bratty kid, much to Naruto's amusement. And, as it had become a habit for him over the past week, he activated the tiny camera hidden in one of the buttons of his clothes to record the entire scene. I can't wait to look at her face once she sees the videos of herself. He was giggling to himself just at the mental image of how embarrassed she was going to be. You know my stance on this. I don't want you to go back to Earth either, Naruto said, but then he started chuckling again when she buried her face into the pillows and let out a muffled yell. Then, she rolled on her back and looked at the ceiling with her arms and legs spread eagle on the bed. Oof. It was the sound she made as all air left her lungs when Naruto unexpectedly threw himself on top of her. Then, she started to squirm with all her strength to escape when his fingers started tickling her sides. No tickling. Ah. Let me go. She screamed and laughed at the same time, but Naruto was merciless. Kurama. Kurama. Help. She yelled. Shut up. The fox barked from the living room of the ship's personal quarters. I swear no one can sleep anymore in this house these days. What are you, little kids? But his words fell on deaf ears as the two of them continued to laugh and giggle while wrestling and rolling in the bed, trying to defeat the other. But when the spaceship suddenly shook, they stopped. Breathing a bit heavily, Naruto pressed his lips on hers in a quick kiss, and then he jumped out of the bed. 5-3 in my favor, he said and rushed out of the bedroom. It's 4-3. Not 5. This morning didn't count. And you said you would stop keeping the score. She yelled after him, but his only response was to laugh. She smiled as she stood up from the bed and followed him out of the bedroom. The shaking of the ship signified that they had finally exited the space warp. Now, the Earth was only 15 to 20 minutes of spaceflight away. When she entered the control room, she saw him sitting in the pilot's seat, inserting commands to set the course of the ship to Earth. She came behind the pilot's chair and leaned with her elbows on the backrest, putting her chin on top of his head. After 1 week spent in the space city of Genesis Stadium together with Naruto, she felt very reluctant at the thought of going back to Earth and dealing with all the problems that were waiting for her. You really don't need to go back to Earth. The Justice League has grown much stronger than before, hasn't it? You said so yourself, you have more than 100 members by now. Naruto said. Wonder Woman nuzzled her face into his red blonde spiky hair. Your hair smells so nice today. You're finally using the shampoo I bought for you, she said, not giving him an answer right away. Previously, Naruto had had only one bottle of shower gel for hands, head, face, and the rest of the body, one for everything. Even Kyuubi used the same thing too when he took a bath. But Diana had found it inconceivable. Now, there were over 5 types of shampoo bottles and other bottles with body lotion and oils too in the ship's bathroom. You know, I like fighting crime. I love protecting the innocent and beating the living daylights out of criminals. Diana said after a while of nuzzling his hair, making Naruto laugh. But what I don't like, she continued, is dealing with those like Lex Luthor and other politicians that are scheming in the dark, behind the scenes. Those that manipulate the public opinion into hating the Justice League and creating an anti-metahumans movement. I hate it when they can do whatever they want by taking advantage of loopholes, knowing that we can't touch them as long as they don't break the law. And even if they break the law, they can buy their way out of jail with bribes and good lawyers. She sighed in annoyance. Things were simpler before when the Justice League was smaller. Yeah, there was much more workload on our hands because there were only 7 of us, but at least it wasn't like this. We didn't have to deal with politics. We didn't have to deal every day with mass media, nor did we have to meet up with various world leaders almost every week at peace summits. Now it's like the whole world is out to get us, just looking for any reason, no matter how small, to criticize whatever we do. Ew. Wonder Woman sat up and moved around the chair in front of him. She sat down in his lap with the back of her knees over the armrest of the pilot's seat and put her head on his shoulder. She had spent 1 week together with Naruto, just relaxing, visiting new places, and having fun, something that she had not done in years. It had helped a great deal in relieving her stress and improving her mental state. However, for some unexplainable reason, the closer to Earth that she got, the more irritated and tired she became. I'm serious, Diana. I mean, since we're already in the Sol system, we can go back for you to say your goodbyes and spend some time with your friends. But we don't need to stay for a long time. It's not like the Justice League needs you specifically any longer. Naruto said. It's too early to leave now. The League did grow much stronger than before, but things are still fresh and rather uncertain. There's a lot of attention on us at the moment too, from the entire world. The League needs me. I am, after all, one of the keys, founding members of the Justice League, and one of the strongest too. Hearing her answer, Naruto did not continue to insist. He knew that Wonder Woman truly wanted to be together with him, but she could not simply throw away her sense of responsibility either. Wonder Woman cared about Earth and its people, about preserving the peace and protecting the innocent. Although she was not happy at having to tackle the other problems that came with it, she did not want to just run away from them. Well, I won't leave right away. I promised you we'd spend the Christmas together, and there are still about 2 to 3 weeks until then, if I'm not mistaken. Not just the Christmas, stay for the New Year too. Diana muttered. When he saw the hopeful look on her face, he found himself smiling. Okay, New Year too, he said and pecked her on the forehead. He could not refuse her anything. She snuggled with her face into the crook of his neck, and he caressed the back of her head gently, inwardly marveling at how soft and silky her hair felt to the touch. She made a hum of comfort at the way he was massaging her scalp. While the two of them were cuddling in the pilot's seat, a 9-tailed fox cub suddenly hopped on Diana's thigh and said, "Naruto, I'm hungry." Naruto laughed helplessly. Nothing else mattered for the bijou once he got hungry. "Yar, yar," he said, but he smiled fondly at the fox. He brought his hand in front of Kyuubi, and a blue sphere of energy a bit bigger than a tennis ball took shape in his palm. Well then, what's it gonna be this time? Kyuubi felt his mouth water at the sight of the blue raisingan. Leave it as it is. Vanilla is good too once in a while. Both Naruto and Diana chuckled at the QB's words while he started to feast on the sphere of chakra. Darkseid is dead? The hell, how did that happen? Few things could surprise Naruto that much nowadays, but what he had just heard certainly was one of them. QB's large ears were not just for show. Though he and Naruto were in a completely different part of the watchtower, the fox could hear perfectly what the Justice League's core members were discussing in the conference room if he concentrated his senses on it. Apparently, Darkseid requested their help against some super-intelligent robot named Brainiac who had attacked Apocalypse, not knowing that in fact, Darkseid had been in cohorts with Brainiac to capture Superman. But in the end, Darkseid backstabbed both Brainiac and the Justice League. However, he underestimated the new and much larger Justice League. He ended up dying in the explosion of an asteroid base after a big battle against the Justice League. Or at least that's what they're saying. QB relayed. At the fox's words, Naruto made a serious thinking face. Darkseid was someone that even he was wary of, hence why he had refused Orion's bounty to assassinate Darkseid, thinking that he would not hold an advantage in a fight against the god of evil on the planet Apocalypse where he could not use his six-path sage mode. To think that they've grown strong enough to even kill someone like Darkseid. Have I underestimated the Justice League? When I fought against the Justice Lords, their counterparts from the other dimension, they didn't strike me as powerful enough to defeat someone like Darkseid, let alone kill him. He was finding it hard to believe that Darkseid died in that manner, or that he died at all. No way that someone who conquered an entire dwarf galaxy died in such a lame way. I wouldn't trust something like this unless I saw his dead body myself. I'm on a vacation for 1 week and that's when all the exciting things happen. Wonder Woman joked lightly. Superman looked at her weirdly. Since when did Wonder Woman start telling jokes? Is Darkseid really dead though? How did you kill him? Did you see his dead body? She asked. Coincidentally, Diana's thought process was identical to that of Naruto. We didn't kill him. Flash answered. He died in an explosion. So you didn't see his corpse? She concluded. Brainiac's base was an asteroid no smaller than the moon. No one could have survived an explosion like that. Not you, not even Superman. Batman said, and Superman supported his words. Darkseid really is finished for good. One of our most dangerous enemies is no more. By the way, what have you been up to for the past week? Kara told me you spent some time with your lover? Ever since I joined the Justice League almost 2 years ago, I've always been tense and ready to fight. No time to rest, no breaks, always on the lookout even during Christmas or the New Year. This 1-week-long holiday has been a long overdue break. Wonder Woman said and smiled slightly when she thought about her time together with Naruto. It's good to have you back, Diana. Martian Manhunter said with a smile. I assume things are going well between you and Mr. Uzumaki? How did you figure that out? Are you kidding? When have we ever seen you cracking jokes? Or smiling like that? Flash said, making the princess look to the side in slight embarrassment, avoiding eye contact. Other than the incident with Darkseid, has anything noteworthy happened over the past week? She asked, quickly changing the subject. Nothing out of ordinary. But I'm concerned with the ever-growing unrest amidst the general population. There was even a protest in the streets against the Justice League a few days ago. Nothing large, but the fact that it happened is worrisome. Martian Manhunter said, and he used a remote control to play a video on one of the screens in the conference room. Almost 300 people could be seen in front of Daily Planet, in Metropolis City. As you see, it's a very small protest, but because they gathered in front of Daily Planet, it appeared all over the media and it escalated greatly from there. Social media platforms are all over it now. Martian Manhunter said. Superman, you work at Daily Planet as Clark Kent. Couldn't you dash Wonder Woman began to say only for Superman to shake his head and reply. I couldn't do anything. I'm just an editor. I have little say in this, I can't control what my co-workers do. Besides, it is within people's rights to protest and express their opinions. Free speech is a right given by the First Amendment of the Constitution. Wonder Woman rubbed at her forehead. She could feel the beginning of a headache. That was what she hated. She was a warrior. She wanted just to fight crime and protect people. She did not want to have to deal with politics, polemics, and mass media. Superman and Lois Lane fought 2 days ago. They're still not talking to each other. Flash brought a hand to his mouth and whispered to Wonder Woman conspiratorially. The Kryptonian pinched the bridge of his nose. You do realize that I can hear you, right? Super hearing and all that. Oops. Flash said, but he was clearly unrepentant if the grin on his face was anything to go by. Ever since they revealed their identities to each other, the core members of the Justice League have grown closer than before. Superman's thorny relationship with Lois Lane was a running joke among them, similar to how Flash constantly tried and failed to get a date. When their meeting was over, Martian Manhunter asked, "When are you ready to resume your duties?" In 2 days, starting with the next week, on Monday," Diana answered. The Martian looked on his tablet at a long and complex table that contained the shifts of all the members of the new Justice League. There were almost 150 heroes already, and the number was steadily growing with every passing week. Creating a schedule to accommodate the needs of all of them was becoming increasingly difficult because most of the members also had families or jobs in their civilian identities. But Martian Manhunter was the brain of the Justice League, the one that coordinated everyone and assigned them tasks and zones to patrol, so he knew better than anyone which zone of the planet lacked manpower. "We'll need you 4 days next week, for 8 to 12 hours every day. Monday and Tuesday on the African continent, in Nigeria. There is a new armed force of rebels that are planning on overthrowing the government with the objective of installing a totalitarian regime. We need to put a stop to it before they actually do it." Then, after a few seconds of double-checking the schedule for open spots, he added, "Friday and Saturday you'll be needed in Asia. Our satellites detected suspicious levels of radiation on the territory of North Korea. We have to investigate it and see the exact cause. It could be that they're trying to develop a new type of nuclear weapon, or it could be that there was a nuclear accident and they are trying to cover it up regardless of the human casualties suffered in the process. We have to investigate the situation and deal with it accordingly. Friday and Saturday could probably take as little as 4 to 5 hours, or it could be a 48-hour-long shift. It depends on what the situation will be. Is that okay with you?" Wonder Woman noted down the details of her assignments for the next week on a piece of paper. "It is fine with me. I have to go now. But if anything urgent comes up, don't hesitate to call me," she said and smiled as she waved in goodbye at them. Once Wonder Woman left the conference room, Flash said, "She's happier than I've ever seen her before. And we've known her for years. Naruto really is treating her well, huh? She's head over heels for him. It looks like Mr. Uzumaki is a very good influence on her." Martian Manhunter agreed. "I wish things were as good between Lois and me as they seem to be between the two of them," Superman said wistfully. Batman raised an eyebrow at him. "Let me guess, your latest fight was not just about the protest, was it? Ever since I revealed to her that I'm Superman, things have not been the same," Superman said. He paused, his face looking as though he greatly disliked what he was about to say, but he needed to get it off his chest. "I feel like all along, she has been attracted only to Superman." Finding out that Superman was also Clark Kent, the country bumpkin from Kansas, must have disillusioned her. "We've been to a few dates before, but we always end up getting in an argument for one reason or another." Flash had never been in a serious relationship with someone before, so he did not know how to answer to that. Martian Manhunter was from a different planet altogether, and he was not exactly sure of the dynamics between men and women on Earth, and Batman simply did not want to get involved in other people's love life. Especially considering that he had also dated Lois Lane as Bruce Wayne a few years in the past, before the Justice League's creation, much to Superman's jealousy back then. As for John Stewart, he was not on Earth at that moment, he was away on Green Lantern business. I think me and Lois are just not working. The Kryptonian looked at the door through which Wonder Woman had left a few minutes before with a peculiar look in his eyes. Don't try to do something stupid, Batman said in warning. While Superman's peculiar look towards Wonder Woman when she left had escaped Flash's and Martian Manhunter's notice, the ever-perceptive Batman had caught it right away. Gotham's Dark Knight was not nicknamed the world's greatest detective for no reason. I don't know what you're talking about, Superman said, but, inwardly, he was spooked by Batman's keen senses and on-spot intuition. He had worked together with Batman for years, and he had gotten used to seeing his brilliance on a daily basis, but there were still moments when he was genuinely startled by him, an ordinary man with no superpowers. Batman shrugged his shoulders. Do whatever you want. But remember to not drag others into your mess. After he said that, Batman left the conference room, leaving behind a confused-looking Flash and Martian Manhunter and a vexed Superman. The meaning of Batman's last words was not lost to him. If Superman did something bad, it would inevitably paint the entire Justice League in a bad light because he was one of the leading and most iconic figures of the Justice League. The Man of Steel was frustrated. It's too late anyway. Flash is right, Diana looks like she's head over heels for Naruto, even I can see that. I only have myself to blame that I pinned for the wrong woman for so long. It's my fault I didn't try to get closer to Diana when I had the chance. The moment he realized that he was contemplating a relationship with a woman different than Lois Lane, guilt bit at his heart. But it also cemented the feeling that his relationship with Lois Lane was not going to work out. I think I should end it sooner than later. No point in dragging it out. It will be better for us both if we ended it quickly and cleanly. The only thing he was afraid of was that Lois Lane might make his identity public. But he shook his head and denied that thought. Lois is a good woman. She would never do something like that. Just because their relationship was not working, that did not mean that his opinion of her as a person had suddenly become bad. They could continue to be friends and get along well at their job like before. Seeing that he was now alone in the conference room, Martian Manhunter and Flash had gone back to their duties. Superman took out his cell phone and started scrolling through his contacts. Then, he selected one and dialed it. After a few seconds, a bright voice answered his call. Clark, is that you? You haven't called me in ages. How are you? A smile appeared on Superman's face when he heard the happiness in her voice. Yes, it's me, Lana. I just wanted to see how are you these days. Haven't heard from you in a while. The famous and extremely busy Superman took some time of his day to call lil old me? The Man of Steel's smile widened at her teasing. Not exactly little anymore. Your clothing line has become quite famous in Paris, hasn't it? Now you're even extending to Milan too. How did you know? Ha! So, you do keep an eye on me. Should I be scared or happy that you're stalking me? He chuckled at her words. It's not stalking. It's my duty to look over my friends. A short silence followed after that. Say, Lana, would you like to meet and catch up over dinner today? I don't know, Clark. This is too sudden. There's a fashion show in Milan today that I have to attend, and I will be exhausted after wearing heels the whole evening. Besides, weren't you and that reporter, Lois Lane, a thing? Superman let out a sigh. We haven't spoken in 2 days. And we argue all the time. It's not working for us. She was always in love with Superman. The country boy Clark Kent was never good enough for her. He said bitterly. I see. Lana Lang replied. Lana Lang and Clark Kent had grown together since they were kids. They were childhood friends. Lana Lang was one of the few people who knew his identity as Superman too, because she had witnessed him growing into his powers from the beginning. She had always wanted something more than just friendship from Clark Kent, but he had turned down her affections, friend-zoning her. Later on, she left the USA to Europe where she became a fashion designer. They had grown more distant over the years and stopped keeping in touch frequently like they used to. I didn't make a move on Diana when I had the chance. Now that train is gone and won't come back. But I won't do the same mistake again. Superman decided. After his experience with Lois Lane, Superman was realizing now that the only woman that has ever truly accepted him, both as Clark Kent and as Superman, was Lana Lang. She was the girl next door that he had been blind enough to think of as just a friend when they were younger. But his view of her had completely changed 3 years ago when Lana Lang returned to the USA. In the meantime, she had become a very attractive woman, a successful fashion designer, and she managed to start a relationship with a billionaire, with Lex Luthor. She has even betrayed Lex Luthor for my sake, exposing his deals with the terrorists. Remembering what she had done for him, Superman realized that Lana Lang still cared for him even after the passing of so many years. So, where exactly in Milan is your fashion show taking place? I can be there in a few minutes. Twinkling laughter came from the other side of the phone. As Clark Kent or as Superman? I'll come as Clark Kent. I can even write an article about your fashion show and your career if you want. What if I wanted you to come as Superman? I wouldn't do that. I don't want to steal your thunder. Nobody would care about your fashion show anymore if they saw me. Superman said teasingly and grinned. You prat. She said, and they laughed together. Chapter 27 Breakup. So, this is where you live? Naruto said when he entered Wonder Woman's apartment. It was a very spacious and modern-looking apartment, on the top floor of a skyscraper, in New York. The floor-to-ceiling tall windows in the living room offered a gorgeous view of the city. Are you surprised? A bit. I was expecting you to live in some ancient manor on a mountain or something. That was a dig at my age, wasn't it? She said with narrowed eyes and slapped him on the butt, making him jump up startled. She laughed delighted at his reaction. What? You've quite enjoyed touching my butt over the past week. I think I'm entitled to do the same with yours. It was one of the very rare moments when Naruto's face became red. Fufu, so you do get flustered too. Grinning from one ear to another, she pressed a quick kiss on his lips, and then slipped away, leaving an embarrassed Naruto behind. When she returned from her bedroom 3 minutes later, he saw that she had taken off her white and golden armor, and put on some casual clothes instead, a pair of gray sweatpants and a baggy dark blue t-shirt. Despite the plain clothes, he felt like her pure beauty was shown even more than when she was wearing her glamorous armor. Don't just stand there, come, make yourself at home. Diana said as she grabbed his hands and pulled him to sit next to her on the sofa. As Naruto took off his fur-collared cloak and put it on the armrest of the sofa, she looked at him silently, from head to toes. I think we should go and buy some normal clothes. You can't go around in your cloak and combat suit everywhere. People will look at you like you've come out of a sci-fi movie. From an Earthling's point of view, it looked like the battle suit of a super soldier from a sci-fi video game. There were matte metallic plates protecting his shoulders, his back, his chest and his shins, a utility belt around his waist and 2 holsters on his thighs that stored a particular type of daggers that had sealing formulas inscribed on their handles. Naturally, if Naruto was placed next to Earth's superheroes, compared to guys wearing bright red colors or their underwear above the pants, his attire would not catch anyone's eyes. But Diana was planning on spending time with Naruto without their armor, among regular civilians. So, when do you start your hero work again? He asked. In 2 days, next week, on Monday. Want me to tag along with you? It would be fun to do some missions together. He said. Diana hesitated. I'd love that, but I don't think it would sit well with the rest of the Justice League. Don't forget, you're still the boogeyman for them. It wasn't too long ago that you and Kurama destroyed a planet. They're still scared by that. Naruto looked bummed out. Speaking of Kurama, I haven't known him for as long as you do, but I think he's been acting strangely in the past few days. After leaving the watchtower and coming down to Earth, Kyuubi asked Naruto to drop him in the center of Africa, somewhere in the middle of the continent's savannah. Now that you mentioned it, I see it too. He's been away for long periods at a time. Maybe it's because of me? Diana asked. Maybe he's trying to give us space and not feel like the third wheel? Naruto looked at her in doubt. I don't know about that. I think he just felt in the mood to bully and beat up some lions. He's always doing that to the apex predators of any planet he goes to. Last time we came to Earth, he beat up and ate a bear in the Balkan Mountains in Europe. Something about showing everyone who's the top dog. But you may be right, he's been quite distant on Genesis Stadium too. I'll go talk to him today. Then, he stood up and grabbed his cloak from the sofa, putting it back on. Where are you going? She asked. I'll go see Dr. Fate. He's helped me a great deal last time with purging the poisoned natural energy from my body. Since I'm back to Earth, I should pay him a visit. Do you want to tag along? She shook her head. Maybe some other time. You go, I'll wait for you here, at home. You might even find a surprise when you come back. Diana followed him to the door, but when he was about to leave, she grabbed him by the cloak. Didn't you forget something? What do you mean? He asked, feigning ignorance. Naruto, she said in a warning voice. He grinned at her glare. But he cupped her cheeks with his hands and kissed her on the lips. What was supposed to be a quick goodbye kiss became much longer when she wrapped her hands around him, not letting him go. At this rate, you'll make me not want to leave anymore, he said when they finally broke away. She giggled and pecked him on the lips one more time. Now you're free to go, she said as she turned him around. Then, she slapped his ass one more time and pushed him out of the apartment. He did not even have the chance to object because she closed the door right after him. Good grief, he said in amusement. Who is she and what has she done with the prudish princess from before? When they had just become a couple, Diana was bashful, and she would flush over the smallest displays of affection from him. But it looked like that was a thing of the past. Now, it seemed like the saying what goes around comes around was quite true because it was his turn to be flustered at her forward behavior. During the elevator ride, he could see his still embarrassed face in the mirrors on the walls. But luckily, there were no other people to see him. An over 100 feet long spaceship landed at the outskirts of Salem, Massachusetts. In the clearing of a forest, there was only one simple building, a rather tall, but very narrow quadrilateral tower made of bricks. There were no windows and no doors and the building itself did not look like anyone could live in it. Naruto walked around the narrow tower with an expression of interest on his face. Behind the white mask covering his face, his slit pupils transformed into rectangular bars like that of a toad and an orange shade appeared around his eyes. After entering the Sage mode, he became able to see the thick energy surrounding the tower. There was an entire network of spells covering it. Confirming that he was at the right location, he cancelled his Sage mode and his eyes returned to their previous appearance, red and slit, like the eyes of a fox. Dr. Fate? Do you hear me? At his call, one of the walls of the tower started to glow and a bright golden portal in the shape of an ankh appeared. Mr. Uzumaki, do come in, a voice came from the beyond the portal. Once he stepped through the portal, he found himself inside a rather dark room. It was not to the point of not seeing his surroundings, but the lack of natural light and the dark red undertone gave the room a mystical feeling. Welcome to my humble abode. An old man greeted Naruto. He had gray hair, and he was dressed no different than other men of his apparent age on Earth. Nothing humble about this place, Naruto said with a chuckle. If I'm not mistaken, this is a pocket dimension, isn't it? I take it it's not the first time you've seen one? Dr. Fate asked. You can say that, yes. What brings you here today? Do you need my help? The sorcerer inquired. Naruto shook his head. No, everything is good. I just returned to Earth today, and I come to say hi. Sorry for coming in uninvited. Dr. Fader turned his head and called out. Inza, dear, we have a guest. Do you mind bringing the refreshments? Then, he showed Naruto to a couch, and they sat down next to a coffee table. I've looked at your tower with my sage mode for a bit. There's an impressive number of spells. I wouldn't be too far off to call this place a fortress. I've made many enemies over the years. Enemies that are far more dangerous than the average thug, beings of a magical nature. As a sorcerer, I can never be too careful. Dr. Fate replied. Naruto took out a scroll from one of the pockets of his utility belt and, under the sorcerer's curious eyes, he unfurled it on the coffee table, revealing the ceiling diagram and kanji drawn on it. Then, he placed his hand on the seal and, with a puff of smoke, a communication tablet, a lightwave device appeared in his hand. Most intriguing. I didn't know you were a magician too. Magician is a very broad term, you know that better than I do. But yes, you could say I am wielding magic powers too. Naruto admitted. He could create small dimensions in his ceiling scrolls to store objects, but that was nothing impressive in comparison to Dr. Fate, who created a pocket dimension that could even hold living beings. They were in it right now. Naruto was clearly aware of Dr. Fate's superiority when it came to magic. In the first place, chakra was more like a cousin of the true magical power, and it was used mostly for battle, not for fine and detailed spells. To cast detailed spells, the use of a fuinjutsu technique was necessary, an array with formulas that would control chakra way better than a living being was capable of. Just then, a beautiful woman that looked like she was in her mid-30s entered the living room pushing a trolley with cookies and nectar. Wearing ankh-like earrings and emitting an aura of tranquility, she was none other than Inza, Dr. Fate's wife. Diana told me that Earthlings have a custom to give their friends presents during the winter holiday. I know it's still early, but I wanted to offer it to you now, so I won't disturb you at that time. Dr. Fate looked at Naruto in surprise. Oh my. The sorcerer was momentarily distracted. He had only helped cure Naruto at the request of the Justice League. He had not expected that the alien would come to think of him as a friend from something as insignificant as that. You're a sorcerer and very wealthy man at that. I didn't know what else to give you. This is a communication device. You can contact me through it, but no matter where in the universe I am, even if I'm at 10 galaxies away. It's a technology belonging to the new gods of New Genesis. Then, he grabbed a cookie from the table and bit from it. I know you are powerful and don't need anyone's help. But the universe is a large place and you never know what could happen next. If you ever find yourself in a tight spot, I will help you. It's a promise. By the time he left Dr. Fate's tower, it was dark outside. It was the beginning of December and night came much faster than before. There were almost 300 miles from Salem in Massachusetts to New York City, but Naruto covered the distance with his spaceship in a few minutes. Flying above New York at night gave him a very beautiful view of the city. He was in a great mood as he rode the elevator towards the top floor of the building where Wonder Woman's apartment was. A smile involuntarily appeared on his face when he knocked on the door. Seeing that nobody was answering, he opened the door by himself. But then, a thick cloud of smoke blasted him in the face, and he momentarily lost his breath. What the hell? Diana. Diana. He closed the door and ran into the apartment worried that something happened to her. I'm here. Following the direction of her yell, Naruto arrived in the kitchen. In there, the smoke was so dense that he could almost not see his hand in front of his eyes. And there she was, wearing an apron and with a bowl in her hand. Wonder Woman was cooking. What are you doing? He asked. Just as he was speaking, Wonder Woman poured the bowl of water in her hands over the pan on the stove. The boiling oil blew up at the contact with the cold water, and the pan was blasted off the stove. The smoke in the kitchen became even denser than before and, as on cue, it started to shower from the ceiling in the entire house as the fire suppression system was activated. And, if that was not enough, only a few moments later, the entrance door was roughly opened and a squad of firefighters burst inside, fully geared to combat the fire. Worried because of the intense smell of smoke, her neighbors had called the fire department. After they dealt with the firefighters and they stopped the fire suppression system from dousing the entire house with water, they had to hire the services of a specialized company to clean up the mess. Nevertheless, they would not be able to come back and live there for the next 2 to 3 days or more. Now, 2 hours later, they were inside a hotel room, sitting in the suite's living room in silence. The rims of Diana's eyes were red and she looked like she was going to cry at any moment. Eventually, she buried her face in her hands and she really started to cry. As for Naruto, he was torn between wanting to laugh and wanting to comfort her. He came next to her and put an arm around her, rubbing her back softly. "Hey, don't cry. It's okay, nothing happened." He tried to soothe her. "I'm sorry. I wanted to give you a surprise, but I'm so useless. I never cooked before." Wonder Woman sobbed. At that, Naruto had to bite his tongue to not laugh. Luckily, she was still with her face in her palms, or she would have seen the traitorous grin on his face. As amusing as the situation was for him, he gradually became more serious when he realized that she was actually crying for real. In the end, Diana cried herself to sleep in his arms, much to his stupefaction. He took her in his arms and carried her to the suite's bedroom. Looking at her tear-stained cheeks, he caressed her gently. He tucked a stray strand of her black hair behind her ear and kissed her forehead. After that, he left the bedroom and closed the door after him. Why did she cry so hard? What was she so upset for? Naruto thought to himself. Maybe because she ruined her apartment? But she didn't strike me as someone who cares about material possessions that much. Besides, I have enough gold to exchange into Earth's currency and buy another place if I wanted. And I'm sure she has plenty of money too. He could not help feeling confused. He wanted to ask for someone else's opinion, but Kyubi was not there, and he did not really have other close friends to ask for advice either. Maybe I'll find an answer on the internet. When they left the apartment, Wonder Woman had taken a small laptop with her too, among several other things. By chance, it was still working, it had not been ruined by the water pouring from the ceiling. As he turned it on, he noticed that it had been in sleep mode, and that a program was already running. It was Internet Explorer, and there was a page open too. 10 ways to show your significant other that you appreciate him. 1. Compliment him. Tell him that he is handsome and that. 2. Cook for him. The fastest way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Few things make men feel as happy as the image of their wife waiting for them at home with warm food and a smile after an entire day at work. 3. Give him long hugs. Suddenly, Wonder Woman's earlier behavior made a lot more sense to him. Naruto palmed his forehead and laughed in a mixture of disbelief and amusement, exasperation even. Yar, that's what you've been crying your eyes out for? It turned out that the reason for her crying had not been her ruined apartment, but the fact that she could not cook to make him happy. But he had never had such expectations from her in the first place. He knew that she had been raised as a warrior. He was not expecting from her to suddenly act like a housewife and cook for him and do chores. To think you were that self-conscious about this. You dummy. He thought, his heart filled with warmth. In contrast to the fluffy and feel-good feelings Naruto was experiencing at that moment, other people were not having it as easy. For example, inside a restaurant in Metropolis City, Superman was feeling quite miserable that evening. That's it? We're gonna end it just like that? A woman said, revolted. She was dressed in a very elegant black dress, wearing heels, and her black hair fell in waves over her back. I thought you invited me out for a romantic dinner, not that you were going to break up with me. Clark Kent exhaled loudly and pinched the bridge of his nose. Don't tell me you haven't seen it yet, Lois. It just doesn't work. We have different views and none of us is willing to compromise. We end up arguing almost every time when we go out on dates. So, you're going to just give up? Am I the only one that cared about this relationship? Ha! I get it. You're a superhero so you can get any woman you want. No point in staying with a nagging, lowly journalist like me, is that it? Superman looked around worried that someone heard her saying that he was a superhero and frowned. I thought you knew me better than that. He said. Yes. I also thought I knew you better than that, but it turned out Clark Kent was Dash. Lois. Superman almost shouted and Lois Lane abruptly shut up. A few heads turned to look at their table, and one of the waiters came to them. Sir, with all due respect, we would appreciate it if you lowered your voices to not disturb the other customers. We apologize. He said awkwardly. The waiter nodded and then went to clean another table of empty dishes. Turning towards Lois Lane, Superman said, Let's talk like adults, without pointing fingers and throwing insults. Taking her silence as her expressing her agreement, he continued. This relationship doesn't make sense when we're both doing nothing but argue and hurting each other. Your father also never liked me in the first place, and he isn't exactly subtle about it. Furthermore, this is about my latest article on the protest, isn't it? She asked. Superman couldn't remember when was the last time he intentionally hit a woman, but he felt like he really wanted to smack her at that moment. Are you not hearing what I'm saying? What's there to listen to? Your Justice League work is more important than me. It's as simple as that. She accused. He sighed in irritation. At one point, he had thought that he was in love with Lois Lane, but he getting more disillusioned with her the better he got to know her. Lana dropped everything and flew over the ocean to help me when people believed that Clark Kent had been assassinated, and she betrayed Lex Luthor too, putting her life in danger for my sake, while we were nothing but friends. And then here's Lois for whom my feelings didn't matter as much as a damned newspaper headline. Any hesitation that he might have had before that evening about ending his relationship with Lois Lane vanished at that moment. Looks like it doesn't matter what I say, you'll ignore it anyway. Since that's the case, I'll stop trying to explain myself. It's just not working between us. But I hope you're smart enough to not reveal my identity. It won't end well for you. Lois Lane clenched her fists. Are you threatening me? You think I'm afraid that you'll dash? I won't have to do anything. Superman cut her off and said, There are hundreds of metahumans and death row criminals that would love nothing more than to have the chance to hurt me or those close to me. If that day when my identity is leaked comes, I will make sure to protect my ma and pa. But I will leave you to the wolves. And you should be well aware of how incompetent the police and even the army are when it comes to dealing with metahumans. Yes, even your father, General Lane, won't be able to keep you safe. And the only one to blame will be yourself. Seeing how Lois Lane was livid with anger, Superman shook his head. That was not how he had wanted to end things between the two of them. He had wanted to part ways amicably and remain friends after that. Now, he regretted that he had ever confided his true identity to her. See you at work tomorrow, Superman said, and he stood up from the table to leave. After he made several steps, he heard her calling. Kent. He turned around to look at her. You're right, I am smart enough to know to keep my mouth shut. But trust me when I say this, I'll make you regret it. She said. Oh, I am regretting it already. Goodbye, Lois. Then, he left without sparing her a glance. Though he was at quite a distance from the restaurant already, his super hearing caught the shout of anger Lois Lane let out after he left and subsequently the yelling match she got into with the waiter after he politely asked her to leave. Slightly shaking his head, he went into a side alley and, in a blur of movements, he changed from his elegant dress suit into his red and blue superhero costume. After that, he took flight and left Metropolis. As he flew, his mind went to a redhead woman, her teasing smile, and her mischievous eyes. Thinking about Lana Lang, his bad mood from his fight with his now ex-girlfriend gradually dissipated, and he smiled. But little did Superman know that Lois Lane would keep her promise, and that it would happen very soon, much sooner than he would have imagined. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.